Is your election news leader, and this evening we're talking October surprises. This describes a last-minute shakeup that can happen once every 4 years during a presidential election. Whether or not we'll have one this time around remains to be seen. KLTV7's Michael Richardson spoke with an East Texas professor about the history of these October surprises.
There's always that fear that an October surprise is going to happen.
With 12 days until the election, Americans are once again discussing October surprises. UT Tyler's Ken Wink explains.
Well, an October surprise is something that happens very close to the election day that potentially can influence the election result.
The term was coined in 1980 by William Casey, Ronald Reagan's campaign manager.
The Reagan campaign feared that the Carter presidency would come up with a deal to release the hostages at the last minute.
One instance that sticks out to Wink came during the 2016 campaign.
This was the Hillary Clinton email scandal. I think it was 10 or 11 days before the election. Comey who was FBI director at the time, sent a letter to Congress saying, yes, we have found some additional emails. The Clinton campaign to this day believes that that cost her the election.
Controversial tape comments Donald Trump made to Access Hollywood are also credited as another October surprise in 2016. Another commonly cited instance was in 2000 when George W. Bush confirmed a drunk driving arrest in 1976. As for the 2024 campaign,
I don't see an October surprise on the horizon.
And whether one could impact the election.
In my opinion, it's doubtful. I wouldn't say it's impossible. I think it is a dwindling minority of people that still have not made up their minds.
Michael Richardson, KLTV 7 News.
And this discussion comes as millions of Americans are already heading to the polls. Here in Texas, early voting will wrap up next Friday, November 1st. Of course, Election Day is November 5th.